Hello and welcome to the Inside Track. I'm Rick Horrow, and coming up on tonight's show, we'll look at all the latest news in and around NASCAR. I'll sit down with Daytona International Speedway President Joey Chitwood, and we'll answer your questions in our mailbag segment. Let's get started. Here's the opening drive. Next week at New Hampshire Motor Speedway will be a day to remember for NASCAR fans. Jeff Gordon is set to make his 788th consecutive start in the NASCAR Sprint Cup Series, tying the series record set by former driver Ricky Rudd. The 44-year-old driver made his first start on November 20th, 1992, and has seen the sport evolve drastically since then. What used to be the Winston Cup, now the Sprint Cup. Tracks have been added and subtracted, cars have evolved, and rules have been rewritten. But one constant among all the change has been Gordon, driving his iconic number 24 Chevrolet for owner Rick Hendrick since day one. As the chase for the Sprint Cup Challenger round began this past weekend at Chicagoland Speedway with the MyAFibRisk.com 400, NASCAR hopes to increase its viewership ratings from last weekend's Federated Auto Parts 400 at Richmond International Speedway. Going forward, as the chase heats up, those affiliated with NASCAR are hopeful their rating and viewership numbers will too. Plenty of stories to talk about in NASCAR this time of the year. Here's a few more in our NASCAR Marketing Minute. NASCAR's massive marketing campaign, Battle of Nations, is calling upon the fans to pick their favorite driver and join the nation of their choosing. The massive integrated marketing campaign being used to promote the 2015 chase for the Sprint Cup, and NASCAR's utilized new television spots, interactive digital experiences, fan parties, and a robust social media push to celebrate the chase launch. Battle of Nations was originally introduced last year and delivered on the hype, drama, and excitement that NASCAR hoped the 10-race playoff would deliver in its first year of existence. The campaign theme was inspired by drivers' loyal fan followings and aligns the 16 chase drivers, their race teams, automotive manufacturers, and partners as unique nations, each looking to grow their fan base and stand above the rest in a quest for the NASCAR Sprint Cup Series championship. This campaign, the sport's largest ever social media campaign, invites fans, teams, and sponsors to show support for their favorite chase drivers and nations by using the hashtag #TheChase. USA Today Sports has introduced the first ever NASCAR Fan Index to aggregate social chatter and host weekly online fan votes to help determine which chase driver has the greatest nation. Also, NASCAR recently launched its first ever Join the Battle app, offering interactive content to enhance fans' experience during the chase on mobile devices. And finally, chase drivers took some time to give back this past week when they toured the country, rallying fans to mobilize and join their respective nation. The multi-city tour saw drivers visit every chase track market, Los Angeles, New York City, and ESPN's headquarters in Bristol, Connecticut, to meet and greet with fans, attend Q&A luncheons, co-host radio shows, visit hospitals, and work with other philanthropic events, all while rallying their troops before the battle. Daytona Rising is the redevelopment of Daytona International Speedway and reaffirms the legendary track as the world center of racing. I recently had the chance to sit down with track president Joey Chitwood to talk about the project and to look ahead to the unveiling at next February's Daytona 500. Here's this week's Beyond the Scoreboard.
This venue's so unique now, with these 11 football field-sized neighborhoods, with 40 escalators, great sight lines. It's truly something you cannot get through any screen wherever you are. So I think we've done a good job of understanding that. Now, having said that, Fox and NBC do such a great job with the broadcast and the in-car audio and all the cameras. There's always that push-pull. But I think our fans realize that over the course of the season, you've got to attend some live races. And now with the new stadium really on the verge of opening, I can't imagine that Daytona isn't in the top 1, 2, 3 positions on that list. And I think we've made the right investment to get there. But now, hopefully, there are things we can learn from this venue and look at our other 11 racetracks and understand what other enhancements and improvements we can come up with. But there's always that balancing act of TV, stay at home, and attend live. And I will tell you, NASCAR is so visceral. The roar of the engines, the flyovers, all those elements that go into it. It's pretty special when you attend a live sporting event.
What are some of the other fan amenities that you're concentrating on?
Well, the number one thing our fans told us was vertical transportation. In our business, the best seat in the house is the top row.
Yeah, right.
And no one wants to climb those stairs up or down anymore. So 40 escalators, 17 elevators. We're going to get you up and down this property a lot easier. 3 different concourse levels. So we've got all of the amenities close to wherever you're sitting. We've got these 11 football field-sized neighborhoods where you can stay connected. Wi-Fi enabled. You can tweet, update, post your status, you name it. You can enjoy the social side of our business when you're at this live sporting event. And of course, fans can still bring a cooler in. That is unique to our sport.
Yeah,
we're not changing that. But again, that's the balancing act of respecting our history and our heritage, but balancing out with the new things that fans expect.
So, fill in the blank. Years from now, historians will look back at the impact of Daytona Rising and say,
the France family, as they did in the late 50s, did something in 2016. They changed the sport forever. They took a racetrack, and it was a great racetrack, and they turned it into the first and only motorsport stadium. Just shows you their vision and where they see the sport going. And I think the France family has done so much, but when I think about where NASCAR was in the late 50s, they were not the most popular form of motorsport in our country. And now, in 2016, creating something no one else has ever done, it just shows the leadership they have for this sport. And I think the sport's in good hands.
Coming up on Inside Track, more with my interview with Joey Chitwood. Plus, I'll let you know who's this week's Bust, Boom, and Hope. Aaron's, which has been a longtime sponsor of Michael Waltrip Racing, will not sponsor a NASCAR team next year, the company confirmed to The Daily. The Atlanta-based rent-to-own retailer's contract with MWR was up for renewal, but MWR is set to close shop following the 2015 Sprint Cup Series race for the Chase, which kicked off this past week. In regard to this decision, the company stated that the NASCAR audience has been important to them and they've built substantial equity over the past 15 years, but are further exploring ways to continue to participate in the sport without sponsoring a team. In other news, Aspen Dental Management has opted to extend its partnership with Stewart-Haas Racing in a multi-year deal that'll make them the primary sponsor on the NASCAR Sprint Cup Series number 10 Chevy, driven by Danica Patrick, for 4 races per season. This deal, which begins in 2016, ups Aspen Dental's previous contract, which gave them 2 races per season. And as seen this past weekend at Chicagoland Speedway, Patrick's ride features Aspen Dental's name, accompanied by the names of more than 2,200 veterans being honored by their family and friends via a social media campaign. Welcome back to the Inside Track. Now it's time for Bust, Boom, and Hope, where I take 3 topics and let you know if they're a bust, a boom, or do we have hope? Bust. The Haas F1 team is unlikely to sign an American driver for its 2016 debut, as there's nobody out there with enough experience, according to team principal Gunther Steiner. American GP2 driver Alexander Rossi has been mentioned as a possible driver since Haas's entry into the grid was confirmed last year, but his F1 experience is limited to 4 practice sessions over 3 seasons. Boom. Lowe's has extended its longtime relationship with Hendrick Motorsports by signing a 2-year agreement that will continue its full-season primary sponsorship of Jimmy Johnson's number 48 NASCAR Sprint Cup team through 2017. Meanwhile, HMS and Johnson also have agreed to a contract extension through 17. The deals come after another sponsor, Exalta, recently broke ground on a customer experience center on the HMS campus. And finally, hope. Richmond International Raceway has asked NASCAR to move the track's spring race from Saturday night to Sunday afternoon. RIR scheduled 2 Saturday night races since 1998 and is the only track with a pair of prime-time events. However, RIR officials believe a change to the afternoon might draw a different audience. With the NASCAR Sprint Cup chase underway, NASCAR's been trending all over social media recently. Here's a look at our social media report. Sitting in 10th place after the first race of the 2015 chase for the Sprint Cup in Chicago, it's looking really good for Hendrick Motorsports driver Dale Earnhardt Jr. to solidify his standing as the chase continues. Earnhardt has 2 wins so far in 2015 and is holding steady in the Cup chase with 2,038 points. Social media-wise, Earnhardt has ascended to the #1 ranked brand ambassador in all of NASCAR. He's incredibly authentic and loves to tell the story of the genuine discussions he has with fans through social media, and how he's humbled to be able to communicate with other athletes across all sports on social media platforms, like the Twitter friendship he struck up with Redskins quarterback RG3. Earnhardt also uses Twitter and other social media platforms as a very public sounding board for anything he's curious about or he's taken an interest in, from music to movies to vacation spots. He's become known for his late-night post-race Twitter Q&As, where he fields unique questions from the fans all over the world. Dale holds the #1 overall social media rank on MVP Index from within NASCAR, ahead of even Danica Patrick. He's become the top NASCAR driver on Twitter 1 month after launching his Twitter account, and sees an average number of 160 retweets every time he posts. He has 1.13 million Twitter followers, compared with Patrick's 1.29 million and 1.04 million for Jimmy Johnson. Earnhardt is also NASCAR's Facebook king. To date, he has more than 2.8 million total followers, more than twice as many followers as Patrick, the second most popular driver on Facebook. Tellingly, Dale gets close to 28,000 likes every time he posts on Facebook. Does this make him NASCAR's most liked driver? Indeed. The Daytona 500 is always one of the top trending items on social media each year, and this year's race will be no different with the renovations to Daytona International Speedway. Here's part 2 of my interview with track president Joey Chitwood in Beyond the Scoreboard.
Joey, you've been a Floridian, a historian, you understand sports. Give me your sense of what the Miami Dolphins over the last 50 years have meant to South Florida, or Florida in general.
Talk about a franchise with a great history, and of course we all think about the unbeaten season and Don Shula and the great personalities. I actually think back to Dan Marino and really kind of the excitement around him. But just a great property, a great brand down there in South Florida. Probably really one of the iconic NFL football teams when you think about it, and exciting. I think for a fan of any sport, you always look to icons, right? And there's some unique brands out there, and I have to think that the Dolphins brand is one of the strongest out there.
You have the benefit of looking at what a mega event twice a year does to a community. So Dolphins are looking at Super Bowls as well. The perspective of what these kind of events mean as it relates to Dolphin fans, for example.
Well, I would say this. I think that the Miami area is the best place to crown champions. It's the right environment, great entertainment. We crown our champion at our Miami Homestead Speedway down there every year. So you think of NASCAR, yes, we have our biggest race in Daytona, but we crown our champion in Miami. And so when you think about the property down there, I can't imagine a better place for a Super Bowl or really any kind of championship that really fits the Miami brand.
You have a unique experience to give fans for the Dolphins advice, in the sense that the Steve Ross $400 million, 2-year renovation, turning it into an entirely different facility, went through 1 year now of construction into another year. That's exactly your process. Yeah. So parallels, advice?
I guess the same thing that we do. You're either renovating or you're innovating. If you're not doing one of those, you're probably going to be in trouble. Sports moves at a fast pace, and there are new venues, there's new opportunities, new experiences everywhere. So if you're not renovating, you're not innovating, in all likelihood, you're behind the pack. And so good for them that they're kind of stepping up for the same thing. And I would tell you that all the properties in Florida need to be thinking of that. Renovate, innovate, there's no other choice.
Jaguar, Buccaneer, Dolphin fan?
I grew up in Tampa, so I actually have a ticket stub to the St. Louis Cardinals game in which the Buccaneers had their first home win, and I still have that ticket stub. So back in the day with Doug Williams and all those guys, and so we'll always be a Tampa Bay Buc fan because of where I grew up, and the John McKay era, which probably better known for his quotes than his wins, right. But always a Buccaneer fan.
Knowing Joey for a long time, we got a straight answer from him. He doesn't have to be a Dolphin fan. He's a fan of Florida sports. Thank you very much.
Coming up on Inside Track, we go to the mailbag, where I'll answer your questions, and then the sports professor pontificates when Inside Track continues. After starting in the 29th position and only 12 days after tearing his ACL in his right leg playing basketball, Denny Hamlin came back from the dead to win late at the MyAFibRisk.com 400 at Chicagoland Speedway. Hamlin edged out Joe Gibbs Racing teammate Carl Edwards by a mere 0.963 seconds to give JGR a sweep of the top 2 spots during Sunday's race. The win was Hamlin's first at Chicagoland, his second of the season, and 16th of his career. With the win, the driver of the number 11 JGR Toyota will advance from the Challenger round to the Contender round of the Chase as the NASCAR Sprint Cup Series heads to New Hampshire for the second race of the postseason. Meanwhile, at Chicagoland, reigning champion Kevin Harvick wasn't as fortunate. The driver who vowed to pound the JGR drivers into the ground 3 days before the chase began instead pounded the turn 3 wall with the rear of his car during lap 135 and ended up finishing 42nd. Harvick now faces what many believe to be a must-win situation in one of the next 2 races if he wants to advance to the Contender round, a situation that the driver of the number 4 Chevy was in last year at Phoenix before taking home the checkered flag at Homestead to secure his first Premier Series title. Welcome back to the Inside Track, and it's time for the mailbag where I answer your questions about NASCAR. First question, golf's looking at its next generation in Jason Day and Jordan Spieth, and the NFL is watching to see who's going to make more of an impact. Heisman Trophy winner Marcus Mariota or runner-up Jameis Winston, who's the Jordan Spieth of NASCAR? Good question. Answer? George Bernard Shaw once famously said that youth is wasted on the young, but that's obviously not true in most sports, where speed and quick reflexes are a benefit, and retirement looms at 40-ish. Tops among the young NASCAR drivers looking to make their marks are 25-year-old Joey Logano, sitting at number 6 in the chase for the Sprint Cup standings, and 23-year-old Kyle Larson not far behind, holding the number 19 position. I'd also keep my eye on Chase Elliott. Last summer, an episode of Bravo's Real Housewives of Orange County featured the housewives attending a NASCAR race at Auto Club Speedway in Fontana, where they met Michael Waltrip and Danica Patrick and took a pace car drive with Clint Boyer. Did that episode lead to a legion of new NASCAR fans from the Bravo TV crowd? The answer, I think, is not necessarily, but cross-marketing efforts on platforms like Bravo that might not make any sense on the surface is an important part of NASCAR's ongoing push for diversity and efforts to attract as wide an audience as possible, not only for the benefit of NASCAR races, teams, and drivers, but also for its sponsors and business partners. Final question for the day, what's the most popular food item sold at NASCAR races? Whether it's 4th of July or the chase for the Cup finale in Homestead in November, the good old all-American hot dog is the clear snack favorite of choice for NASCAR fans everywhere. But we're not just talking about a foot-long dog and a ho-hum bun, but regionally inspired signature dishes. Martinsville Speedway boasts that iconic $2 dog that's as closely linked to racing as the Dodger dog is to baseball. More than 50,000 are sold at the track come race weekend, and crew members compete to see who can eat more. Not to be outdone, Charlotte Motor Speedway has its Big Og Cheddar Dog, a foot long on a pretzel roll wrapped in jalapeno bacon with chili. Thanks for sending in your questions, and please continue to do so. But before we say goodbye, it's time for the Sports Professor Pontificates, and tonight it focuses on Daytona Rising. There sure must be something magical in the atmosphere around Central Florida. Or maybe it's in the water, because the nearly completed Daytona Rising development in and around Daytona International Speedway is every bit as aspirational as its Magic Kingdom neighbor to the southwest. Like Disney World before it, Daytona Rising started as an idea, in this case, the fierce vision of the France family. And Daytona International Speedway President Joey Chitwood and a handful of NASCAR's very own Imagineers. Part destination resort, part mixed-use community, all surrounding the most captivating thrill ride of all time, Daytona Rising is also a savvy business model that's already being emulated in part at other NASCAR tracks and beyond. The real fun, however, is in the unknown. When Disney World opened, no one had yet envisioned Epcot Center or Hannah Montana playing on a dedicated Disney Channel, or the ESPN Wide World of Sports complex that in itself draws millions of families each year to play their own games. There's no doubt that Daytona Rising will be the same kind of catalyst, and that 20 years from now, we'll be marveling at some innovation in the NASCAR universe that hasn't even been thought of yet. But it'll be sparked by the imagination of Daytona International Speedway and Daytona Rising, NASCAR's own Tomorrowland. Well, that'll do it for tonight's show, and I'd like to thank Joey Chitwood for joining us. Be sure to look for us on social media. I'm Rick Horrow, and that's the Inside Track. Good night, everyone.